The locket was the only reason Elsa Valois was still alive. Not because it was valuable, though the tarnished silver and faded crest suggested it once had been, but because 10 years ago, when she was 8 years old and her mother was dying in a shelter bed, her mother had gripped that locket so hard it left marks on her palm and whispered, "Never sell this. Never lose this. When the time comes, this will prove who you are." Elsa had asked what that meant. Her mother died before answering. Now 18, sleeping under the stone portico of St. Jude's Cathedral in San Francisco, invisible to the thousands of people who walked past her every day, Elsa still wore the locket. Still had no idea what it proved or who she was supposed to be. She only knew what she'd become, a ghost living in the shadow of a church. Until the day a stranger looked at her and saw something no one else ever had. Not pity, not disgust, not the careful avoidance most people perfected. Recognition. Hey everyone! Welcome to a story that's going to take you from the streets of San Francisco to the halls of a forgotten dynasty, from absolute poverty to unimaginable wealth, and from invisible to undeniable. I'm so glad you're here. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I love hearing from you all around the world. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now because this story has twists that are going to leave you absolutely stunned. We're talking hidden identities, stolen fortunes, and a grandmother whose disappearance 50 years ago is about to change everything. You won't want to miss a single moment. Now let's get back to Elsa, because what's about to happen is going to shatter her entire understanding of who she is. It was raining the day everything changed. Not the soft San Francisco mist that Elsa had learned to sleep through, but a real downpour that drove even the hardiest street residents into shelters and doorways. Elsa huddled under the cathedral's portico, pressed against the ornate wooden doors that were always locked except during services. She'd been sleeping here for 3 years. Before that, a different church across town. Before that, shelters when she could get a bed, parks when she couldn't, the occasional youth facility until she turned 18 and aged out of what little system existed. St. Jude's was her territory now. She knew its rhythms. Morning mass at 7, noon services on Wednesdays, evening gatherings on Thursdays, the soup kitchen that operated out of the basement on Tuesdays and Fridays. She knew which priests would pretend not to see her and which would try to save her soul. She knew where the cameras had blind spots and which corners stayed warmest when the fog rolled in. She knew how to be invisible. The church was having some kind of historical preservation event today. Elsa had seen the signs. Archival volunteers needed. Help preserve St. Jude's legacy. She'd watched a handful of older people arrive throughout the morning, carrying laptops and cameras, disappearing into the building. History. Like it mattered when you were trying to figure out where your next meal was coming from. Around 2 p.m., the rain intensified. Elsa was debating whether to risk the youth shelter on Mission Street. They'd kicked her out last time for breaking curfew, but maybe they'd forgotten when the cathedral doors opened behind her. She scrambled to her feet, ready to move. The priests tolerated her presence, but didn't like her too close to the entrance where parishioners might see. But it wasn't a priest. It was a man, maybe 60, with wire-rimmed glasses and a cardigan that looked like it had been purchased sometime in the 1990s and never replaced. He carried a messenger bag stuffed with papers and had the slightly bewildered expression of someone who spent more time with books than people. "Oh," he said, nearly tripping over Elsa's backpack. "I'm terribly sorry, I didn't see." He stopped mid-sentence, staring at her. Elsa knew that look. It usually preceded either a lecture about getting her life together or an offer of help that would require her to enter some system, follow some rules, surrender some control. She'd learned to deflect both. "I'm moving," she said, grabbing her backpack.
"Sorry."
"Wait." The man's voice was sharp with something that wasn't anger. "Your name. What's your name?" Red flags everywhere. Elsa had survived this long by trusting no one, answering nothing, disappearing before questions could become problems. "Does it matter?" she asked, already backing away. It might. It might matter quite a lot. The man fumbled in his bag, pulled out a phone. "I'm Dr. Henry Cross. I'm a genealogist. I volunteer here cataloging the church's historical records. And I just spent the last 4 hours reading about the founding families of this cathedral." He looked at her again, that strange intensity in his eyes. One of those families was named Valois, the industrialist Valois family. Have you ever heard that name? Elsa's hand went unconsciously to the locket beneath her shirt. The movement didn't escape Henry's notice. "You have something," he said. "Something old. Something that belonged to your family. I can see it, the chain around your neck." "I don't know what you're talking about," but her heart was hammering. The Valois family disappeared in the 1970s. Massive scandal, corporate fraud. The heiress vanished without a trace. Her name was Contessa Isabella Valois. People called her the Countess. The Countess, the name her mother had used in fevered whispers during her final days. The Countess would never have let this happen. The Countess was strong. You have to be strong like her. Elsa had thought it was delirium, a fairy tale her mother told herself to make dying in a shelter less unbearable. "I don't know anyone named that," Elsa lied. Henry was pulling up something on his phone, his fingers shaking slightly. "There's only one photograph. One single image of Contessa Isabella that exists in public records. It was taken in 1972, a year before she disappeared. She was 40 years old." He turned the phone toward Elsa. The black and white photo was grainy, faded, but the woman in it was striking. Dark hair pulled back severely, high cheekbones, eyes that looked almost black in the photograph. Elegant, imperious, wearing pearls and a dress that probably cost more than most people made in a year. And she looked exactly like Elsa, not similar, not reminiscent, exactly like her. "That's impossible," Elsa whispered. The Countess had one daughter, born in 1971, named Catherine. The records say Catherine died young, sometime in the 80s, though there's no death certificate I can find. Henry was speaking faster now, excited in the way only academics got about historical puzzles. But what if she didn't die? What if she went into hiding with her mother? What if she had a child of her own? Why would they hide? Because the Valois fortune disappeared the same time they did. $50 million in 1973. With interest, with property holdings, with corporate assets that were frozen but never liquidated, that fortune is worth somewhere between $300 and $500 million today. And it's sitting in a legal trust, unclaimed, because the firm managing it declared the Valois line extinct. The numbers were too big to process. Elsa had spent the last decade figuring out how to scrape together $8 for a meal. 300 million was a fairy tale number. "This is insane," she said.
"I'm nobody."
What's your full name?" Henry asked gently. Elsa hadn't said her full name out loud in years. Since her mother died, she'd been just Elsa to the shelter workers, the street kids, the social workers who occasionally tried to process her into systems she always slipped out of. But her mother had been very specific about her name, had made her memorize it, practice it, promise never to forget it. Elsa Catherine Valois, she heard herself say. Henry went completely still. Catherine. Your middle name is Catherine. It was my mother's name. She died when I was 8. And your grandmother? I never met her. My mother said she died before I was born. But she called her the Countess. I thought it was a nickname. Something from the old country or it was literal. Contessa. Italian for Countess. Henry's hands were shaking now. Elsa, I need you to show me what's in that locket. Please. Every instinct Elsa had developed over 10 years of survival screamed at her to run. This was too weird, too convenient, too much like the cons she'd seen other street kids fall for. Promise of money, promise of family, just sign here, just trust me, just give me your information, and everything will be fine. Except her mother had said the locket would prove who she was. And this strange, awkward man who looked like he'd never told a lie in his life was staring at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. Slowly, Elsa pulled the locket out from under her shirt. It was small, tarnished, the silver worn down to brass in places. The chain was a cheap replacement. The original had broken years ago. But the locket itself was old, delicate, engraved with a design Elsa had never quite been able to make out. Henry pulled reading glasses from his pocket, leaned in close. Oh my God, he breathed. That's the Valois crest. The eagle and the rose. I saw it in the church records, on the original donation documents from 1898 when the family funded the cathedral's construction. He looked up at her, his eyes wide behind his glasses. Elsa, this locket belonged to your grandmother. This is proof of your bloodline. Proof of what? That I'm related to some people who died 50 years ago. Not died. Disappeared. And not gone. The money is still there. The estate is still there. The trust is still active. Henry grabbed her shoulders, his academic detachment shattered by genuine excitement. Elsa, you're not homeless. You're an heiress. You're possibly one of the richest young women in California, and you don't even know it. The rain pounded harder, soaking through Elsa's jacket, but she couldn't move, couldn't process, couldn't do anything but stare at this stranger who just told her everything she believed about her life was wrong. Why? She whispered. Why would my mother and grandmother hide? Why would they Why would they let me grow up like this if there was money? Henry's expression shifted, darkened. That's the question, isn't it? Because according to the records, the Valois fortune didn't just disappear. It was stolen. There was a corporate scandal, accusations of fraud, warrants issued. And then Contessa Isabella Valois and her daughter vanished the night before she was supposed to testify. He paused. I think your grandmother wasn't hiding from the law. I think she was hiding from whoever framed her. And I think they're still out there. A chill ran down Elsa's spine that had nothing to do with the rain. If I try to claim this money, then whoever destroyed your grandmother's life will know you exist. Will know the Valois line isn't extinct. Henry's voice was grave. And they'll do whatever it takes to make sure you never get what's yours. Elsa looked down at the locket in her hand, at the crest she'd carried her entire life, without understanding what it meant. Proof of who she was. Proof of everything she'd lost. And possibly proof that would get her killed. What do I do? She asked. Henry smiled grimly. We prove your identity. We expose the truth. And we take back what they stole from your family. They'll come after us. Probably. We could die. Possibly. Henry held out his hand. But you've been surviving on church steps for years, Elsa. I think you're stronger than whoever's been living off your family's money. Don't you want to find out? Elsa looked at his hand, at the choice being offered. Stay invisible and safe, or step into the light and risk everything for a chance at the truth. She thought about her mother dying in a shelter, whispering about the Countess. She thought about the Countess herself, her grandmother, who'd apparently been powerful enough that someone had to destroy her completely to steal what was hers. She thought about 10 years of being invisible, and she took Henry's hand. Tell me everything, she said. Start from the beginning. Who was Contessa Isabella Valois? Henry's smile was fierce. She was a legend, and you're her legacy. Come inside out of the rain. We have a lot of work to do. They walked into St. Jude's Cathedral together, the homeless girl and the genealogist, neither of them knowing they'd just declared war on people who'd spent 50 years making sure the Valois name stayed buried. But somewhere in the city, in an office tower with views of the bay, an alert was triggered. Someone had accessed the sealed Valois family records. Someone was asking questions. And the people who'd profited from the Countess's disappearance were about to learn that some bloodlines refused to die. And just like that, everything changes. A homeless girl, a lost fortune, and enemies who've been waiting 50 years to make sure the truth stays buried. What do you think happened to the Countess? Drop your theories in the comments because I'm reading every single one. And if you're already hooked, if you need to know what happens when Elsa discovers the full truth about her family, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is about to explode. Welcome to the beginning of Elsa Valois' war. The church archives were in the basement, a maze of filing cabinets and boxes that smelled like dust and old paper. Henry led Elsa to a small office in the back where he'd set up a makeshift workspace. Laptop, scanner, stacks of documents organized with obsessive precision. Sit, he said, gesturing to a folding chair. When did you last eat? Elsa couldn't remember. Yesterday, maybe.
Ai fine.
You're not fine. You're malnourished and exhausted. Henry pulled a sandwich from his bag, still wrapped. Turkey and cheese. I packed 2, because I always forget to eat lunch. Take it. Elsa stared at the sandwich like it might be a trap. In her experience, nothing came free. But her stomach was cramping with hunger, and Henry had already turned back to his laptop, pulling up files like feeding her was just a practical necessity, not charity.
She ate.
It was the best thing she'd tasted in weeks. Tell me about your mother, Henry said, not looking away from his screen. Everything you remember. Why? Because I need to trace your lineage. Birth certificates, medical records, anything that connects Catherine Valois to Contessa Isabella and you to both of them. He glanced at her. And because you've been alone for a long time, and sometimes talking about the people we've lost helps us remember why we keep fighting. The observation was so unexpectedly kind that Elsa felt something crack in her chest. Her name was Catherine Marie Valois, she said quietly. She was sick my whole life. Different illnesses, always moving from place to place. We never stayed anywhere longer than a few months. She worked when she could, cleaning houses, washing dishes, anything that paid cash under the table. She was terrified of hospitals, of giving her real name, of leaving any kind of paper trail.
She was hiding, Henry said.
I know that now. But when I was a kid, I just thought she was paranoid. Crazy. Elsa's throat tightened. The other kids in the shelters used to make fun of her. She'd have these episodes where she'd grab me and say we had to leave immediately, that they were coming, that they'd found us. We'd pack everything in 10 minutes and disappear. Did she ever say who they were?
No.
Just that they'd taken everything from her mother, that they'd killed her family, that if they found us, they'd kill us too. Elsa looked at the locket in her palm. She gave me this the day before she died. Said it was from the Countess. Said when I was older, I'd understand what it meant. But you never did. I was 8 years old when she died. The shelter called social services. I got placed in foster care for about 6 months. Before I ran away. Been on my own ever since. Elsa's voice was flat, reciting facts. 10th birthday in a group home. 11th in Golden Gate Park. 12th through 18th on church steps, in shelters, anywhere I could sleep without getting arrested or assaulted. Henry was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough.
I'm sorry.
No child should have to survive that way.
Yeah, well.
I did survive. That's more than a lot of kids can say. It is. Which tells me you have your grandmother's strength. By all accounts, Contessa Isabella was formidable. Built the Valois industrial empire from almost nothing after she immigrated from Italy in the 1950s. Shipping, real estate, manufacturing. She was one of the wealthiest self-made women on the West Coast by 1970. What happened to her? Henry pulled up a newspaper article, dated 1973. The headline read, Valois Industries Scandal. Heiress implicated in fraud. Corporate fraud charges. Allegations that she'd been embezzling from her own company, falsifying records, bribing officials. The evidence was overwhelming. She was supposed to testify before a grand jury. He scrolled to another article. She never showed up. Disappeared the night before. Took her daughter Catherine and vanished. Warrants were issued. She was declared a fugitive. But she wasn't guilty, Elsa said. It wasn't a question. I don't think so, no. Because look what happened after she disappeared. He showed her another series of articles. Valois Industries was sold to a consortium of investors for pennies on the dollar. The company was broken up, assets liquidated, employees laid off. Within 2 years, the Valois name was completely erased from San Francisco's business landscape. And the people who bought the company became very, very wealthy. So someone framed her, made her look guilty, so they could steal her company. That's my theory. And I think when Isabella realized what was happening, she grabbed her daughter and ran. Went into hiding to protect Catherine from whoever had destroyed her. Henry's expression was grave. But Catherine still grew up poor, sick, afraid. Which means Isabella either lost access to her money or knew that accessing it would give away her location. She chose to protect her daughter over reclaiming her fortune. Wouldn't you? Elsa thought about her mother, dying in a shelter rather than going to a hospital where she'd have to give her real name. Catherine had made the same choice Isabella had, safety over money, protection over comfort. 3 generations of Valois women, all running from the same invisible enemy. Why do you care about this? Elsa asked suddenly. You don't know me. This isn't your fight. Henry removed his glasses, cleaned them carefully. My wife died 5 years ago. Cancer. We never had children. I retired from teaching and spent 2 years doing nothing but grieving. He put his glasses back on. Then I started volunteering here, researching church history, trying to find some purpose again. And today I found you. A girl who looks exactly like a photograph from 50 years ago, wearing a locket that proves she's the heir to a stolen fortune. He smiled slightly. You're the most interesting historical puzzle I've encountered in 40 years of research. How could I not help? It's dangerous. So is grief. So is purposelessness. I'd rather die doing something meaningful than fade away in my empty house. Elsa studied him, saw the loneliness beneath the academic exterior, saw someone who needed a purpose as much as she needed help. Okay, she said. What do we do first? First, we prove your identity. I need documentation. Your birth certificate, your mother's birth certificate, medical records, anything with the Valois name. Do you have any papers from when you were in foster care? Maybe. I had a caseworker who gave me a file when I aged out. I never looked at it. Elsa hesitated. I keep my stuff in a storage locker under the freeway. Other homeless kids use it, but we have rules. Nobody steals from each other's stashes. Can you get the file?
Yeah.
But Henry, if we start digging into this, if we file claims or whatever, won't they know? The people who framed my grandmother? Probably.
Which is why we need to be smart about it.
We gather evidence first, build an airtight case, and then we strike fast before they can react. He pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. This is my address. You're not sleeping on church steps anymore. You're staying with me. I can't. You can and you will. I have 3 bedrooms and no one to use them. You need a safe place to work from. This isn't charity, Elsa. This is strategy. If you're going to take on the people who destroyed your family, you need to do it from a position of strength, not from under a church portico. Elsa looked at the card, at this strange offer of safety from a man she'd met 2 hours ago. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. You should be suspicious of everyone, including me. But I'm offering you a choice. Keep surviving alone, or let someone help you fight. Henry's eyes were kind but serious. Your grandmother was strong enough to build an empire. Your mother was strong enough to protect you for 8 years while running for her life. Now it's your turn to be strong enough to take back what they stole. Elsa thought about the locket, about 3 generations of Valois women who'd lost everything, about the chance to finally stop running. Okay, she whispered. I'll try.
Good.
Now, let's go get that file. We have a fortune to reclaim. The storage locker was under the 101 freeway in a forgotten corner where homeless encampments sprawled between concrete pillars. Elsa led Henry through the maze with practiced ease, ignoring the suspicious stares from residents who didn't recognize the well-dressed older man following the street kid. Her locker was a rusted metal cabinet someone had abandoned years ago, secured with a combination lock. She opened it, revealing her meager possessions: extra clothes, a sleeping bag, 3 books, and a manila envelope marked SF County Social Services. She'd never opened it, never wanted to see whatever bureaucratic assessment of her worthlessness was inside. Now she pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside were photocopies, her birth certificate, her mother's death certificate, intake forms from foster care, and something else. A letter, handwritten, addressed to Elsa in her mother's shaky script. She wrote this before she died. Elsa whispered. I didn't know. Henry stepped back, giving her privacy. Elsa read, My darling Elsa, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you're alone.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry I couldn't give you a normal life. I'm sorry I made you live in fear.
But I need you to understand why.
My mother was Contessa Isabella Valois. They called her the Countess. She built an empire, and they destroyed her for it. A man named Richard Hastings orchestrated everything. The fraud charges, the evidence, all of it was fabricated. He worked for my mother, then betrayed her to steal her company. We ran the night before her testimony because someone warned us, a friend in the DA's office. He said they wouldn't let her testify. They'd kill her and make it look like suicide. So we disappeared. My mother died in 1985. Heart attack in a motel in Oregon. She made me promise to keep running, to keep you safe, to never use our real names. I kept that promise. Richard Hastings is still alive, still powerful. He's now CEO of Hastings Global Industries, the company built on my mother's stolen empire. If he knows you exist, he'll eliminate you. The locket has the Valois crest. It's your proof. But proof won't matter if you're dead. Stay hidden, my love. Stay safe. Don't try to fight them. I love you.
I'm sorry.
Mom, Elsa's hands trembled. Richard Hastings. We have a name. Henry had gone pale. Hastings Global Industries. They're one of the largest conglomerates in California. Shipping, tech, real estate.
He pulled out his phone, searched.
Richard Hastings is 83 years old. Still serves as chairman of the board. Worth an estimated $4 billion. $4 billion built on what he stole from my grandmother. Elsa, if your mother was right, if he's willing to kill to protect his empire, then he's been living off my family's money for 50 years while we died in shelters. Elsa's voice was ice. I don't care how powerful he is. I want what's mine. Henry's phone buzzed. He frowned at the screen, then went white. What? I have an alert set up. Academic monitoring for historical records access. His voice shook. Someone just pulled the Valois family files from the Hall of Records. Official request filed 20 minutes ago, right after we accessed the church archives. They know, Elsa breathed. They know I'm looking. We need to move.
Now.
If they track you to this location, a black SUV pulled up at the edge of the encampment. 2 men in suits stepped out, scanning the area. Henry grabbed Elsa's arm. Run. They ran, abandoning the storage locker, disappearing into the maze of tents and shopping carts while behind them, the men began asking questions. Asking about a girl. About church steps. About the name Valois. The war had begun. Henry's house was a modest Victorian in the Sunset District, filled with books and the comfortable clutter of a man who'd stopped caring about appearances after his wife died. He locked the door behind them, closed all the curtains, and immediately started making phone calls. Elsa stood in the middle of the living room, adrenaline still coursing through her veins, clutching the manila envelope like a lifeline. They'd escaped the men at the encampment by cutting through back alleys Elsa knew by heart. She'd heard them shouting behind her, heard car doors slamming, but her 10 years on the streets had taught her every hidden path, every fence with a loose board, every route the police and predators couldn't follow. Henry had kept up surprisingly well for a 60-year-old academic. "Who are you calling?" she asked when he hung up for the 3rd time. "Everyone I trust," which turns out to be 3 people. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. A former colleague who specializes in estate law. A private investigator I used for genealogy research. And a friend who works at the Chronicle. A journalist? Are you insane? If this goes public, it's harder for Hastings to make you disappear quietly. Henry's voice was firm. Right now, you're invisible. No one knows you exist. That makes you vulnerable. But if your story is out there, if people know about the Valois heir, killing you becomes complicated. Or it makes me a bigger target. Possibly. But we're past the point of safe options. He gestured to the couch.
Seat.
We need to talk strategy. Elsa sat, every muscle tense. She'd never been in a house like this. Never sat on furniture that wasn't donated or institutional. The normalcy of it felt wrong, like wearing someone else's skin. Hastings knows we're looking, Henry said, pacing. which means he'll be taking action. First, he'll try to find you. Second, he'll work to discredit any claim you make. Third, if those don't work, he'll use more direct methods. You mean kill me? Yes. Henry didn't sugarcoat it. But he's also 83 years old. He's not doing this alone. He has people. Lawyers, security, probably others on his payroll who've been monitoring the Valois name for decades, waiting to see if anyone surfaced. So, what's our move? We prove your identity before he can stop us. We file a claim with the trust that's holding the Valois estate. We make your existence legal and documented and impossible to erase. Henry pulled out his laptop. My estate lawyer friend is named Patricia Chen. She's been handling inheritance disputes for 30 years. If anyone can navigate this, she can. When does she want to meet? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Her office in the financial district. He paused. She'll need to verify your documents. The birth certificate, your mother's letter, the locket. Everything we have that proves you're who you claim to be. Elsa touched the locket at her throat. What if it's not enough? Then we get DNA evidence. There are still distant Valois relatives in Italy. We can establish a genetic link. Henry's expression softened. Elsa, I know this is overwhelming. 24 hours ago, you were sleeping on church steps. Now you're being hunted by a billionaire. If you want to walk away, and go where? Back to the streets? They know what I look like now. They know my name. Elsa's laugh was bitter. I'm already in this fight. Might as well try to win it. Okay. Then you stay here tonight. I have a guest room. Tomorrow we meet with Patricia, and we start building the legal case. He hesitated. You should shower. Eat something. Try to rest. Rest. Like she could sleep knowing men in suits were looking for her. But Henry's kindness was relentless. He showed her the guest room, the bathroom, left clean towels, and a pair of his late wife's pajamas that he pulled from a box with shaking hands. Margaret was about your size, he said quietly. She'd want someone to use these. Elsa took the first hot shower she'd had in months. Watched dirt and exhaustion swirl down the drain. Stood under the spray until the water ran cold and her skin was pink. When she emerged, Henry had made dinner. Pasta, salad, bread. Real food on real plates at a real table. I don't know how to do this, Elsa admitted, sitting across from him. This normal thing. I've been surviving so long, I don't remember how to just live. You'll remember. It takes time. Henry served her pasta with steady hands. Tell me something. Why did you stay at St. Jude specifically? There are other churches, other neighborhoods. My mother used to take me there when I was little, before she got too sick. She'd light candles and pray to someone she called the Countess's saint. Elsa picked at her food. I didn't understand it then, but I think she was praying to her mother, asking Isabella to watch over us. St. Jude is the patron saint of lost causes, Henry said. Your grandmother helped build that cathedral. Maybe your mother felt close to her there. Maybe. Elsa finally took a bite. The pasta was simple, but perfect. Why are you really helping me, Henry? And don't say it's because I'm an interesting historical puzzle. He was quiet for a long moment. When Margaret died, I wanted to die too. I had no children, no purpose, no reason to keep going. I was just existing, waiting for it to be over. He looked at her. Then today I saw you. A girl who'd survived impossible circumstances. A girl who should have been broken, but was still fighting. And I thought, maybe this is why I'm still here. To help you when a fight you shouldn't have to fight alone. That's a lot of pressure. You're already carrying it. I'm just offering to share the weight. Before Elsa could respond, Henry's phone rang. He looked at the screen, frowned. It's Patricia. She wasn't supposed to call until tomorrow. He answered, putting it on speaker. Patricia? Henry. The woman's voice was tight, professional. I got your message about the Valois case. I need you to listen very carefully. I've been researching the estate for the last 3 hours. The trust is real. The money is real. But Henry, the firm managing the trust is Hastings Global Legal Services. Henry's face went white. That's Richard Hastings' firm.
Yes.
He's been the trustee of his victim's stolen estate for 50 years. He's been collecting management fees, controlling the investments, essentially profiting twice. Once from stealing the company, and again from managing what's left. Can he do that? Elsa asked. Can he just control my family's money? If the heir is declared legally dead and no challenges are filed, yes. And the Valois line was declared extinct in 1995, 28 years ago. Which means he thinks he's safe, Henry finished. He thinks no one's left to challenge him.
Exactly.
But if you file now, if you prove Elsa's identity and contest the extinction order, the entire estate goes into probate. Every transaction he's made would be reviewed. Every fee he's collected would be scrutinized. Patricia's voice carried a grim satisfaction. You wouldn't just be reclaiming the Valois fortune. You'd be exposing 50 years of fraud. He'd face criminal charges. Prison time. So he has every reason to stop us before we can file, Elsa said. Every reason in the world. Which is why I'm not meeting you at my office tomorrow. It's too public, too easy to monitor. I have a safe location. I'll text you the address. Come at 6 a.m., before anyone's watching. Bring every piece of documentation you have. Patricia paused. And Henry, watch your back. Hastings doesn't lose. Ever. If he knows about the girl, he's already planning how to eliminate the problem. She hung up. Henry and Elsa looked at each other across the dinner table. We could still walk away, Henry said. Find you a new identity. Get you out of California. You could start over somewhere safe. And let him win? Let him keep my family's money while my mother died in a shelter? Elsa's jaw set.
No.
I'm done running. If he wants to stop me, he'll have to kill me. And I'm harder to kill than I look. Henry smiled despite everything. You really are her granddaughter. Isabella would be proud. Let's make sure I survive long enough to deserve that. They spent the rest of the evening preparing documents, rehearsing Elsa's story, building the case. At midnight, Henry finally convinced her to try to sleep. Elsa lay in the guest room bed, surrounded by softness and safety, and couldn't close her eyes. Every sound made her jump. Every car passing on the street could be them, coming to finish what they'd started 50 years ago. At 3 a.m., she heard it. A car stopping outside. No engine cut, just idling. Watching. She crept to the window, peered through a gap in the curtains. The black SUV from the encampment sat across the street. 2 men inside. Waiting. They'd been found. Elsa woke Henry by pressing her hand over his mouth. His eyes flew open in terror, but she put a finger to her lips and pointed toward the front of the house. He understood immediately, rolling out of bed and following her to the living room window. The SUV was still there, still watching. We go out the back, Henry whispered. Through the neighbor's yard. My car is 2 streets over. They'll follow us. And we can't lead them to Patricia. Elsa's mind was racing through 10 years of survival strategies. We need to know who they are first. What they want. What they want is to stop you from filing that claim. Maybe. Or maybe they want something else. She looked at Henry. You said Hastings is 83. He's been managing this trust for 50 years. Why would he suddenly send people the same day we start asking questions? How would he even know that fast? Henry's expression shifted. You think there's someone else? Someone closer? I think church archives aren't exactly high security. Anyone could have seen us researching the Valois family. Anyone could have alerted Hastings. Elsa moved away from the window. Or maybe these aren't Hastings's people at all. Then whose? Before she could answer, headlights swept across the front of the house. A second car pulled up, blocking the SUV. A woman got out. 50s, dressed in an expensive coat, moving with purpose. She walked directly to the SUV and knocked on the window. The men inside opened the door. There was a brief, heated conversation. Then the woman pulled something from her coat, a badge, and the men's posture changed completely. Defensive.
Caught.
Who is that? Elsa breathed. Henry grabbed his phone, zoomed in with the camera. I can't see clearly, but the woman turned, as if sensing she was being watched, and looked directly at the house. Her face was illuminated by the streetlight. Elsa's breath caught. The woman looked exactly like the photograph of Contessa Isabella. Older, but unmistakable. Same cheekbones, same imperious bearing, same dark eyes. That's impossible, Henry whispered. Isabella died in 1985. Your mother's letter said. My mother thought she died. Elsa's voice was shaking. But what if she didn't? What if my grandmother is alive? The woman walked toward the house. Confident, unafraid. She knocked on the front door. 3 precise raps. Henry and Elsa looked at each other. This is insane, Henry said. Everything about the last 24 hours has been insane. Elsa moved toward the door. I have to know. She opened it. The woman stood on the porch, illuminated by the porch light, and time seemed to stop. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. This woman was older than the photograph, her dark hair now white, her face lined with decades, but her eyes were sharp and assessing and exactly like Elsa's own. Elsa Catherine Valois, the woman said. Her voice was accented, elegant, carrying the weight of authority. You look exactly like your mother did at 18. Who are you? I think you know. The woman stepped closer. My name is Isabella Navarro. I was born Contessa Isabella de Valois, and I am your grandmother. The world tilted. You're dead, Elsa whispered. My mother said, your mother believed I died, because that's what I needed her to believe. I faked my death in 1985 to protect her. To protect you. Isabella's eyes glistened. May I come in? Those men in the SUV are private investigators working for Hastings. I sent them away, but they'll be back with reinforcements. We don't have much time. Henry opened the door wider. How did you find us? I've been monitoring mentions of the Valois name for 40 years. When church archives were accessed yesterday, I was alerted within an hour. When estate records were pulled, I knew someone had found Elsa. Isabella entered, moved with practiced grace to the living room. I've been watching this house since midnight, making sure those investigators didn't try to extract her before I could arrive. Extract. Elsa felt sick. You mean kidnap? I mean eliminate. Richard Hastings has killed to protect his empire before. He'll do it again. Isabella sat, gestured for them to do the same. I need you to understand what you're walking into. This isn't just about reclaiming money. This is about exposing a conspiracy that has lasted half a century and involves some of the most powerful people in California. Then help us expose it, Elsa said. If you're alive, if you can testify, I can't. Isabella's voice cracked slightly. If I surface, if my survival becomes known, I lose the one advantage I have. Richard thinks I'm dead. He thinks the Valois line ended with Catherine. He's been careless because he believes he's safe. So, you've been hiding for 40 years, watching him profit from what he stole? Henry's voice held disbelief. I've been surviving, and planning, and gathering evidence. Isabella pulled a small drive from her pocket. I have documentation of every illegal transaction, every fraudulent filing, every murder Richard Hastings has committed or ordered in the last 50 years. I've been building a case, waiting for the right moment to destroy him. Why not do it yourself? Elsa asked. Because I'm dead. Legally, officially dead. Any evidence I present can be dismissed as fabricated by a mentally unstable woman with a grudge. But you? Isabella looked at her granddaughter with fierce pride. You're his nightmare. You're the living heir with a legal claim. You can file in probate court, force an investigation, make everything public. And once the case is opened, once journalists and prosecutors are involved, I can come forward with the evidence that buries him. You've been waiting for me, Elsa said slowly. All this time, you've been waiting for someone to file a claim. I've been waiting for you specifically. When Catherine died, when I learned she'd had a daughter, she kept hidden even from me. I tried to find you, but you'd vanished into the foster system, then onto the streets. I've had investigators searching for 18 years. Isabella's voice broke. I found you 3 months ago. I've been watching you sleep on those church steps every night since, trying to find the courage to approach you. Why didn't you? Because approaching you meant putting you in danger. As long as you were invisible, you were safe. But yesterday, when you gave your name, when you started asking questions, the clock started ticking. Hastings knows about you now. So I had to choose, stay hidden and watch you be killed, or step into the light and fight beside you. You chose to fight. I chose my granddaughter. Isabella stood, crossed to Elsa, and gently touched her face. You have your mother's courage, and my stubbornness. Together, we're going to take back everything he stole and make him pay for every life he destroyed. Elsa felt tears streaming down her face. 10 years alone. 10 years of survival. And now, impossibly, family. What do? We meet with Patricia Chun at dawn. We file the claim. And then we go to war. Isabella's smile was fierce. Richard Hastings has been living off Valois money for 50 years. It's time the Valois women reminded him what happens when you underestimate us. Henry was staring at Isabella with academic awe. This is extraordinary. You're extraordinary. The historical implications alone can be documented after we survive the next 72 hours, Isabella interrupted. Right now, we prepare. Elsa needs to understand what she's walking into. The danger, the scrutiny, the very real possibility that Hastings will try to kill all of us. I understand, Elsa said. And I'm still in. Good. Isabella pulled out her phone. Then let's begin. I have safe houses, lawyers, security, everything we need. But first, we get you both out of here. Hastings's people will be back within the hour, and this time they won't just watch. They gathered documents, packed essentials, prepared to disappear. As they headed for the back door, Elsa looked at her grandmother, impossible, alive, fierce, and felt something she hadn't felt in 10 years. Hope. Not just for money or justice, but for family, for belonging, for finally understanding where she came from and who she was meant to be. The Valois women were going to war, and God help anyone who stood in their way. Can you believe this twist? Isabella is alive. Everything just changed. If your jaw just hit the floor, if you need to see how this impossible reunion turns into a battle against a billionaire who's been living on stolen money for 50 years, you need to subscribe right now. Hit that button. And smash the like button if you're Team Valois all the way. Drop a comment and tell me, did you see this coming? Because what happens next is going to be absolutely explosive. 3 Valois women against an empire built on lies. This is going to be epic. Don't miss it.
Subscribe. Like.
And let's bring Richard Hastings down together. Isabella's safe house was a penthouse in Oakland, owned under a shell corporation that had no connection to the Valois name. They arrived at dawn, exhausted but alive. "We filed a claim at 9, Isabella said, reviewing documents with Patricia Chen, who'd arrived separately. Once it's in the court system, Hastings can't make it disappear quietly. But at 8:15, Patricia's phone rang. Her face went ashen as she listened. "I understand."
Yes.
"I'll tell them." She hung up, her hands shaking. The probate judge assigned to Valois cases just recused himself. His replacement is Judge Martin Whitmore. Isabella went rigid.
No.
"You know him?" Henry asked. "He was on Hastings's payroll in the 70s. He's the one who rubber-stamped the extinction order in 1995. Isabella's voice was ice. "He'll dismiss the claim before we can even present evidence. We've lost before we've begun. Then we go to the press," Elsa said. "We tell the story publicly. I tried that." Isabella pulled up a news article on her phone, published 20 minutes ago. Look, the headline read, "Elaborate fraud scheme targets Hastings Global, imposter claiming Valois heritage exposed." The article detailed how an unnamed homeless girl, working with conspiracy theorists and disgraced academics, was attempting to defraud Hastings Global by claiming to be the heir to the extinct Valois line. It included quotes from forensic experts saying the locket was a replica, the documents were forgeries, and DNA evidence had already proven the girl was unrelated to the Valois family. "That's impossible," Elsa breathed. "I never gave DNA. He fabricated everything. The test, the experts, all of it." Isabella's composure was cracking. "By the time we prove it's false, the narrative will be set. You'll be the con artist. I'll be the delusional old woman. And Hastings will be the victim." Patricia stood abruptly. "I can't be part of this. I'm sorry, but if this goes forward, I'll be disbarred. My career, my reputation. So you're abandoning us?" Henry's voice rose. "I'm protecting myself. I suggest you do the same." Patricia grabbed her briefcase. "Hastings wins. He always wins. Accept it and walk away while you still can." She left, taking with her their legal strategy and their hope. Isabella sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 83 years.
She's right.
He's too powerful, too connected. I thought if I waited long enough, gathered enough evidence, I could beat him. But I was wrong. Grandmother. You should go, Elsa. Take a new identity. I have money hidden offshore. You could disappear, live comfortably, be safe. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. I've already lost my daughter to this fight. I won't lose you too. So, we just surrender? Elsa felt rage building. Let him win. He's already won. 50 years ago. Everything since has been me refusing to accept it. Henry looked between them, these two Valois women who'd survived impossible circumstances, now broken by a billionaire who'd systematically destroyed every avenue of justice. Maybe Patricia was right, he said quietly. Maybe it's time to walk away. Elsa looked at the locket in her hand, at the crest that proved who she was, at the legacy 3 generations had died protecting. She thought about her mother, dying in a shelter, about her grandmother, hiding for 40 years, about 10 years sleeping on church steps while the man who stole everything lived in luxury. And something inside her hardened into steel. No, she said. We don't walk away. We burn it all down. Isabella looked up. What? He wants to play dirty? We play dirtier. He controls the judges and the press? We go around them. We find another way. Elsa's voice was fierce. You didn't survive 50 years just to give up now. And I didn't survive 10 years on the streets to let some old man scare me into hiding. Elsa, it's not that simple. Yes, it is. We're Valois women. We don't surrender. She looked at her grandmother. Do we? For the first time since Patricia left, Isabella smiled.
No.
We really don't. You think it's over? You think Hastings won? Oh, you have no idea what's coming. If you want to see how 3 people with nothing take down a billionaire with everything, you need to subscribe right now. Hit that button. Smash the like. Tell me everything, Elsa said. Every piece of evidence you have on Hastings. Every crime, every fraud, every person he's hurt. All of it. Isabella pulled out a laptop from a safe in the closet. 50 years of documentation. Financial records, witness testimonies, photographs, recordings. Everything. And it's all inadmissible because you're legally dead, Elsa said. But what if we don't use the courts? Henry leaned forward. What are you thinking? Hastings controls the judges and the mainstream press. But he doesn't control everything. Elsa's mind was racing, pulling from years of surviving on the streets where the official systems ignored you. Social media. Independent journalists. Whistleblower platforms. We don't need a corrupt judge to validate the truth. We need the public to demand justice. A media campaign? Isabella's eyes sharpened. Exposing everything before he can spin it? More than that. We release everything simultaneously. The documents, the evidence, your testimony. We don't ask permission from a system he owns. We bypass it entirely. Elsa looked at Henry. You said you contacted a friend at the Chronicle? David Park. Investigative journalist. But after that hit piece this morning, that was a planted story in the business section. David works investigations. Different editors, different standards. Elsa was pacing now, energy building. What if we give him the exclusive? The entire story. The homeless heir, the billionaire fraud, the grandmother who faked her death. It's Pulitzer-level material. He'd need proof, Henry said. Real, verifiable proof. I have DNA, Isabella said suddenly. I've been storing samples for years, waiting for this moment. We can prove genetic connection between Elsa and myself. That establishes the bloodline. And I have the documentation from foster care with my mother's name, Elsa added. Catherine Valois. That connects me to her. But we still can't prove Isabella is who she claims to be, Henry pointed out. She's been dead for 40 years. Any records? Not all of them. Isabella's smile was sharp. I was fingerprinted when I immigrated in 1952. Those records are sealed in federal archives, but they exist. And I have scars, medical records from before I disappeared, identifying marks. A forensic expert could confirm my identity. Henry was nodding, caught up in the momentum. And once we establish identity and bloodline, the locket and documents become corroborating evidence rather than the primary proof. What about the article calling me a fraud? Elsa asked. We use it. We show how quickly Hastings mobilized to discredit you, how he fabricated DNA evidence and expert testimony overnight. Isabella pulled up files on her laptop. I have documentation showing he's done this before. 3 other people over the years who got too close to the truth. All of them were destroyed by media campaigns that painted them as conspiracy theorists or con artists. So we show the pattern. We prove this is his playbook. Elsa felt hope building for the first time since Patricia abandoned them. We don't just tell my story. We tell the story of everyone he's silenced. Isabella was already typing, pulling together files. There's a woman, Maria Santos. She worked for Valois Industries in the 70s. Witnessed Hastings planting false evidence. She tried to testify and was institutionalized. Spent 20 years in psychiatric hospitals. Is she still alive? Henry asked.
Yes.
Living in a care facility in Sacramento. I've been supporting her financially, anonymously, for decades. Isabella's voice was tight with old guilt. She lost her entire life trying to tell the truth about him. Then we find her. We get her testimony. Elsa looked at her grandmother. How many others are there? 7 that I know of. Accountants, executives, journalists. All destroyed for getting too close. We find them all. We tell all their stories. Elsa's voice was steel. We show that the real fraud isn't me. It's him. It's always been him. Henry was on his phone.
David
Just responded. He's willing to meet. Today. He says if the story is as big as I claim, he'll run it. His editor owes him, after his last expose, 1 awards. Where? Isabella asked. Neutral location. He suggested the Ferry Building. Public, lots of witnesses. Hard for Hastings to make a move. Henry checked the time. He can meet at 2 p.m. For hours. They spent the time preparing. Isabella organized 50 years of evidence into a coherent narrative. Henry created a timeline of Hastings's crimes. Elsa wrote her own story in raw, unflinching detail. The mother who died in a shelter, the grandmother she never knew, the 10 years surviving on streets while the man who destroyed her family lived in a penthouse. At 1:30, Isabella pulled Elsa aside. If we do this, there's no going back. Hastings will come after us with everything he has. Legal, financial, possibly violent. Her eyes were fierce but afraid. I can still get you out. New identity, new life, safety. You don't have to fight this war. Yes, I do. Elsa touched the locket. My mother spent her whole life running. You spent 40 years hiding. I'm done with both. I want my name back. I want my family's legacy back. And I want him to pay for every life he destroyed. Isabella pulled her into a fierce embrace. Your mother would be so proud. So would yours. They arrived at the Ferry Building separately, watching for surveillance. David Park was already there, a man in his 40s with sharp eyes and a recorder visible on the table. He looked up as they approached, and his eyes widened. Holy shit, he breathed. You really do look exactly like the photograph. They sat. For the next 3 hours, they told him everything. David listened, took notes, asked pointed questions, examined documents with the skepticism of someone who'd been lied to professionally for 20 years. But as the evidence mounted, as the story unfolded, his expression shifted from doubt to shock to righteous anger. "This is bigger than fraud," he said finally. "This is one of the largest asset thefts in California history." And the cover-up involved judges, prosecutors, media outlets. He looked at Isabella. "If I run this, Hastings will destroy me too." "Probably," Isabella agreed. "But if I don't run it, I'm complicit in letting him win." David's jaw set. "I need 3 days. 3 days to verify independently, to interview the other victims, to build a story so airtight he can't discredit it." "Can you stay hidden that long?" "We've stayed hidden for decades," Elsa said. 3 more days is nothing. David stood, shook each of their hands. "I'm going to need you to go on record. Full interviews, photographs, the DNA evidence. This can't be anonymous." "We know," Isabella said. "We're ready." After David left, they sat at the waterfront, watching ferries cross the bay. 3 days, Henry said. "Then the whole world knows." "Then Hastings knows we're not backing down," Elsa corrected. "He'll escalate," Isabella warned. "Everything he's done so far has been subtle. But once we go public, once we threaten everything he's built, he'll stop playing games." "Good." Elsa's voice was hard. "I'm tired of games. Let's finish this." They returned to the safe house as the sun set over Oakland. They had 3 days to prepare for war. 3 days before the Valois name returned from the dead. 3 days before Richard Hastings learned that some families refused to stay buried. Isabella spent the evening coaching Elsa on family history, filling in gaps, preparing her for the scrutiny that would come. Henry worked with David's researcher, verifying documents, establishing timelines. And Elsa sat with her mother's letter, reading it again, understanding now what Catherine had been trying to tell her. Stay hidden or fight back. Run or stand. Surrender or reclaim. She'd made her choice. At midnight, a news alert lit up Henry's phone. Richard Hastings has announced his retirement, effective immediately. He's stepping down as chairman of Hastings Global due to health concerns. They stared at each other. "He knows," Isabella said. "He knows we're coming, and he's trying to distance himself from the company before the story breaks." "Too late," Elsa said. "The story isn't about the company. It's about him, and you can't retire from the truth." 3 days. Then the war would go public. And win or lose, the Valois women would finally be seen. They thought they could silence her. They thought a homeless girl had no power. But you know what? They were dead wrong. If you want to see the Valois family take down a corrupt billionaire, if you want to watch justice finally catch up to Richard Hastings, you need to subscribe right now. Hit that button like your life depends on it. Smash that like button. Because what happened next is where everything explodes. David Park's article went live at 6 a.m. on a Thursday morning. The headline dominated the Chronicle's homepage. "The Countess returns. How a homeless girl uncovered California's biggest fraud." Within an hour, it had 50,000 shares. Within 3 hours, every major news outlet was picking up the story. By noon, Richard Hastings's penthouse was surrounded by reporters. Elsa watched it unfold from Isabella's safe house, her grandmother beside her, both of them holding their breath as 50 years of secrets became public knowledge. The article was devastating. David had interviewed all 7 victims, obtained financial records proving the fraudulent extinction order, published DNA evidence confirming Isabella's identity and Elsa's lineage. He tracked down the judge who rubber-stamped the 1995 declaration, now retired and willing to admit he'd been bribed. Most damning of all, he'd found Maria Santos. The woman who'd been institutionalized for trying to expose Hastings had given a video interview from her care facility, lucid and powerful, detailing exactly how Hastings had framed Isabella Valois in 1973. He destroyed her because she wouldn't sell, Maria said into the camera, her aged hands shaking but her voice strong. She built that company herself, and he wanted it. So he manufactured evidence, bribed officials, and drove her into hiding. Then he stole everything and made himself a billionaire on her legacy. By 2 p.m., the FBI announced an investigation into Hastings Global Industries. By 4 p.m., the company's stock had crashed 60%. By 6 p.m., Richard Hastings was arrested. Elsa watched the news footage of him being led from his penthouse in handcuffs. This 83-year-old man who'd seemed untouchable just days ago, now facing federal fraud charges that could put him in prison for the rest of his life. "It's really over," she whispered. "Not over," Isabella corrected. "Just beginning. Now comes the legal battle to reclaim the estate, the testimony, the trials." She squeezed Elsa's hand. "But the hardest part is done. The truth is out. We're not invisible anymore." Henry's phone rang. He answered, listened, then smiled wider than Elsa had ever seen. That was the probate court. Judge Whitmore has recused himself. The new judge is fast-tracking the Valois estate claim. With Hastings arrested and the fraud exposed, there's no legitimate opposition. He looked at Elsa. "You're going to get it all. The fortune, the properties, everything. You're about to become one of the wealthiest young women in California." Elsa looked around the safe house, at Henry who'd believed her, at Isabella who'd fought for 50 years, at the news footage showing Hastings's empire crumbling. She thought about sleeping on church steps, about being invisible, about the locket her mother had given her with shaking hands. "I want to start a foundation," she said, "for homeless youth, kids like me who fell through the cracks. I want to give them what I never had, a real chance." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "Your mother would love that. So would the Countess," Elsa said, smiling at her grandmother. "The Countess is right here," Isabella said, "and she's so very proud." Outside, the sun was setting over Oakland. Somewhere in the city, other homeless kids were finding places to sleep, trying to survive another night. But now they had hope, because one of them had fought back and won. And the Valois women were just getting started. That is how you take down a corrupt billionaire. That is justice. If this story gave you chills, if you're crying happy tears right now, if you believe in the power of truth over money, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button hard. Absolutely demolish that like button. Because stories like this, stories about the powerless finding their power, about truth winning over lies, about family and justice and never giving up, this is what we're all about. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me, what would you do with that? Fortune?
Subscribe.
Like. And remember, you're never as powerless as they want you to believe. Let's go. Part 9. Satisfying conclusion. 6 months later, Elsa Valois stood on the steps of St. Jude's Cathedral wearing a dress that cost more than she used to spend on food in a year and felt like an imposter. The cathedral had been transformed for the occasion. Banners announced the grand opening of the Valois Foundation for Youth Empowerment. Cameras lined the street. Reporters called out questions. Hundreds of people had gathered to witness the homeless girl-turned-heiress officially launch her charitable empire. But all Elsa could think about was the last time she'd stood on these steps, invisible, exhausted, with nothing but a locket and the will to survive one more day. "You're allowed to feel overwhelmed," Isabella said beside her, elegant in a tailored suit, no longer hiding. "6 months ago, you were sleeping here. Today you're changing the world from here. That's a lot to process." "I don't feel like I'm changing the world. I feel like I'm playing dress up in someone else's life. This is your life now. You earned it." Isabella squeezed her hand. "And you're using it better than I ever did. I built a fortune for myself. You're building one for others." The Valois Foundation had been Elsa's first priority once the estate was settled. $380 million, accumulated over 50 years of investments and property appreciation. Hastings had been managing it, skimming fees, profiting from the family he destroyed. Now it was hers, and she'd immediately committed half of it to the foundation. The organization would provide housing, education, mental health services, and job training to homeless youth across California. Real help, not the bureaucratic systems that had failed Elsa and countless others. She'd hired people who'd lived on the streets, who understood what was actually needed rather than what sounded good in grant applications. The first facility had opened last month in the Tenderloin. 50 beds, no questions asked, no requirements except a willingness to accept help. It was full within 24 hours. "We're ready for you," Henry said, appearing at her elbow. He'd become the foundation's unofficial historian, documenting everything, making sure the Valois story was preserved accurately. "The mayor is here, the press is set up, and there are at least 200 homeless youth waiting to hear you speak." "No pressure," Elsa muttered. "You've testified before Congress about homeless youth policy. You've been interviewed on national television. You've faced down a billionaire criminal. A speech should be easy." Henry smiled. "Besides, you're not speaking as some politician. You're speaking as someone who lived it. They'll listen." Elsa walked to the podium set up on the cathedral steps. The crowd quieted. She looked out at the faces. Saw young people in the front rows, some clean and hopeful, others still rough from street life. Saw reporters with their cameras. Saw Isabella, standing tall and proud. Saw Maria Santos in a wheelchair, finally free from the care facility, finally vindicated after 40 years. And she saw the photograph David Park had brought, now enlarged and displayed beside the podium. The only photograph of Contessa Isabella Valois from 1972, beside a current photo of Elsa. Grandmother and granddaughter, separated by 50 years, identical in their determination. 6 months ago, I was homeless, Elsa began, her voice steady. I slept on these steps for 3 years. I was invisible to most people walking by. Just another street kid, another problem for someone else to solve. She paused, let that sink in. I'm not special. I didn't pull myself up by my bootstraps or overcome through sheer willpower. I survived because a stranger saw me. Because Dr. Henry Cross looked at me and saw a person instead of a problem. Because my grandmother risked everything to help me. Because a journalist believed my story deserved to be told. Elsa looked directly at the young people in the front row. You're not invisible. You're not problems to be solved. You're people who've survived. Circumstances that would break most adults. You're resourceful, resilient, and stronger than anyone gives you credit for. And you deserve help. Real help. The kind that doesn't require you to perform gratitude or follow impossible rules or prove you're worthy. She gestured to the cathedral behind her. The Valois Foundation exists because my family's fortune was stolen by someone who thought poor people don't matter. who thought a homeless girl couldn't possibly be someone important. He was wrong. And every system that failed you is wrong. Her voice grew stronger. We're opening 20 facilities across California this year. Housing, education, healthcare, job training. No one will be turned away. No one will be deemed unworthy. You'll be treated like the valuable human beings you are. Elsa pulled out the locket, held it up. This belonged to my grandmother. For 10 years, it was the only proof I had that I came from somewhere, that I mattered to someone. Now it's proof that you can come from nothing and still reclaim everything. That you can be invisible one day and undeniable the next. That your story isn't over just because the world stopped looking at you. The applause started in the front rows, spread backward, grew into something thunderous. Elsa stepped back from the podium, overwhelmed. Isabella embraced her, fierce and proud. You did it, her grandmother whispered. You took our tragedy and turned it into hope for thousands. The press conference continued for another hour. Elsa answered questions, posed for photos, shook hands with politicians who suddenly cared about homeless youth now that there was money and publicity involved. But the moment that mattered came after, when a girl approached her, maybe 16, hollow-eyed, and carrying a backpack that probably contained everything she owned. Is it real? The girl asked. The foundation, the help. Or is it like the other programs that say they'll help but don't? It's real, Elsa said. I promise. Because I've been where you are. I know what real help looks like versus bureaucratic bullshit. We're different. Why should I believe you? Elsa pulled out a card, wrote an address on the back. Because this is where I'll be tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Our Tenderloin facility. Come find me. I'll show you myself. I'll help you myself if I have to. The girl took the card, studied it suspiciously. Then she looked at Elsa, really looked and saw the truth. You really were homeless. For 10 years. I know what it's like to be invisible, to be afraid, to not know where your next meal is coming from or where you'll sleep tonight. Elsa met her eyes. And I know what it's like to find out you're stronger than you ever imagined. Come tomorrow. Let us help. The girl nodded, pocketed the card, and disappeared into the crowd. Henry appeared at Elsa's side. Think she'll come? I hope so. But if not her, someone else will. We're here now. We're not going anywhere. That evening, Elsa returned to the penthouse she now owned, Isabella's former home that had been recovered from Hastings's assets. It was beautiful, with views of the bay, art on the walls, every luxury imaginable. But her favorite place was the small room she converted into an office, where she kept reminders of where she came from. Her old backpack, the clothes she'd worn that rainy day when Henry found her, photographs of St. Jude's Cathedral steps, and on her desk, the case files of 7 people whose lives Hastings had destroyed. All of them now receiving restitution from the Valois Foundation. All of them finally getting justice. Maria Santos had been given a house, full-time care, and a formal apology from the state that had institutionalized her. The others were rebuilding their lives with financial support and legal help. And Richard Hastings was in federal prison, convicted on 47 counts of fraud, facing 30 years. At 83, it was effectively a life sentence. Isabella joined Elsa in the office, carrying 2 glasses of wine. You know, when I built the original Valois empire, I thought success meant money and power and respect, Isabella said. I was wrong. This is success. What you've built. What you're doing for others. I couldn't have done it without you. You would have found a way. You're a survivor. We all are. Isabella raised her glass. To the Valois women, may we never be invisible again. To being seen, Elsa agreed. They clinked glasses as the sun set over San Francisco, painting the sky in shades of gold and fire. Somewhere in the city, a girl was reading a card with an address, deciding whether to trust a stranger's promise of help. Somewhere, a young person was checking into a Valois Foundation facility, getting their first safe bed in months. Somewhere, the invisible were becoming visible. And on the steps of St. Jude's Cathedral, where a homeless girl had once slept unnoticed, a plaque had been installed that morning, in memory of Catherine Valois, who survived with courage. In honor of Contessa Isabella Valois, who fought with determination. In celebration of Elsa Catherine Valois, who turned tragedy into hope. May all who are lost find their way home. Elsa had cried when she saw it. Now, standing in her grandmother's penthouse, holding a glass of wine that cost more than she used to spend on food in a month, she felt something she hadn't felt since her mother died.
Peace.
She'd found her family. She'd reclaimed her name. She'd taken back what was stolen. But more than that, she'd found her purpose. The homeless girl who slept outside a church for years had become the woman who made sure no one else had to. And that was worth more than any fortune. This is the ending we all needed. From church steps to penthouse. From invisible to unstoppable. From homeless to heiress. If this story moved you, if it gave you hope, if it reminded you that your story isn't over no matter how dark things look right now, then you absolutely must subscribe to this channel. Hit that subscribe button like it's your job. Destroy that like button with everything you've got. Because this is what we do here. We tell stories about people who refuse to stay down, about truth beating lies, about the powerless finding their power and changing the world. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me what you'd do if you suddenly inherited a fortune. And remember, you are not invisible. You matter. Your story matters. And someone out there is looking for you, waiting to see you, ready to help you rise.
Subscribe, like, share.
And never, ever give up. Let's change the world together.